Have you ever found yourself stuck in that endless loop of a forgot password screen, for the same account again? Or maybe you felt that sort of low-level anxiety when another massive data breach hits the news, wondering exactly how much of your stuff is now floating out there. It's more than just annoying, isn't it? It feels like a constant battle for control over our own digital selves. Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Imagine a digital world where you genuinely own your identity, like truly own it, where you decide precisely what information you share, when you share it, who you share it with, and it's all wrapped in a level of security that actually feels, empowering. That's the future we're exploring today. We're diving into a really foundational document, a kind of blueprint for decentralized identity systems. And it really promises to be a potential game-changing solution to these exact frustrations.
Exactly. Our source material for this deep dive is the High-Level Business Architecture Blueprint. And it's not just a tech manual. Its core purpose is really to define the fundamental what and why, but also the how for building these kinds of transformative systems. It's fundamentally about empowering individuals and organizations, too, with much greater agency over their digital identity and, crucially, their personal data. And what's particularly insightful, I think, is that it's structured according to the Moresburg Model for trust frameworks and schemes.
The Moresburg model. Okay, what does that mean for us, as listeners, or for how solid this blueprint actually is?
That's a good question. So the Moresburg Model is, it's a recognized industry standard. It's essentially a really comprehensive framework designed to make sure that any digital trust ecosystem built using it is not just technically sound, but also fair, legally compliant, and importantly, operationally robust for everyone involved, all participants. So yeah, it brings a very structured, very well-reasoned approach to understanding the foundational business bits and pieces, the principles needed for, long-term success.
Okay, got it. So our mission today is really to pull out the most important insights from this blueprint, give you, the listener, a kind of powerful shortcut to understanding what makes these systems tick, and maybe more importantly, why they actually matter for your digital future. We want you to walk away feeling genuinely well-informed on what's happening at the cutting edge of digital identity. Let's just jump right in then. At its core, what's the fundamental problem this whole system is trying to solve for us? Like beyond just the password hassle, what's the big picture?
The big picture, fundamentally, is that our current digital identity landscape is, it's inherently fractured. It's centralized. We're kind of forced to rely on countless separate siloed systems, often managed by third parties. And this means your identity data. It's scattered all over the place across numerous databases, which makes it a prime target, frankly, a lucrative one for breaches and misuse. The blueprint's sort of elevator pitch for its solution is actually both simple and, I think, quite profound. To empower individuals and organizations with much greater agency over their digital identity and personal data. It fundamentally shifts control away from institutions and back to the individual.
That shift in control, that sounds incredibly appealing, but it also sounds like a massive undertaking, right? So why is this decentralized approach genuinely superior to the methods we've kind of grown used to? What are the main, tangible benefits we're talking about?
Well, the Blueprint's executive summary lays out several really compelling drivers and goals that make this shift both necessary and beneficial.
Yeah.
On the business driver side, we see just immense pressure from escalating privacy concerns, and increasingly strict regulatory compliance hurdles. Think GDPR in Europe, CCPA in California. These really demand fundamentally better ways of handling data. There's also a big push for data sovereignty, this idea that data is subject to the laws of the country where it's collected or where the individual lives. Plus, enhanced security to drastically cut down data breach risks, and of course, a pursuit of greater operational efficiency. But what's fascinating, I think, is that these systems aren't just an improvement. They're actually poised to be a significant market disruptor across many industries.
A market disruptor. Wow, okay. That's a bold claim. Which industries do you think might be most profoundly disrupted by this? And what's maybe the biggest barrier to that disruption actually taking hold?
Well, just think about any industry that heavily relies on identity verification or personal data. So finance, healthcare, education, even e-commerce, they all stand to gain massively. Imagine seamless, privacy-preserving credential sharing for medical records or for loan applications. The biggest barrier. Ironically, it's often just inertia, the sheer weight of existing centralized systems and the challenge of building widespread trust in a new way of doing things, even if it's demonstrably better for the user in the long run. But getting back to the Blueprint's business goals, they are ambitious, yes, but they're clear. To truly empower users, significantly reduce fraud making identity theft, much, much harder, vastly improve the overall user experience by just removing friction, foster true interoperability between different systems so your credentials actually work everywhere, enable entirely new business models, things we can't even really conceive of with our current identity infrastructure.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. If we're building this new digital world, what are the non-negotiable foundational principles guiding it? Like what values are baked right into the core of this decentralized system?
Yeah, the blueprint really emphasizes a set of core principles. These govern all the technology choices, the operations. They ensure trust and user centricity. First and foremost is privacy. And this isn't just about ticking compliance boxes, right? It means designing the system specifically to give users greater agency over their personal data, making sure only the absolute minimum amount necessary is shared for any given interaction. Then there's security, which is, well, it's a fundamental non-negotiable requirement. All the components have to be built from the ground up to protect against threats, to ensure the integrity of the entire system. We also have transparency and accountability. This just means all the system processes, all the obligations of participants, they have to be crystal clear. And there needs to be a model that holds all parties responsible for what they do. It's about building trust through clarity. And finally, interoperability is absolutely key. The architecture is designed from the start to be fully compatible with other trust frameworks, other digital identity ecosystems. The goal is seamless interaction, broad adoption, not just creating another siloed system.
So boiling that down, what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means a system where your control and your protection aren't just tacked on at the end, they're foundational design principles, where your privacy isn't merely a checkbox you tick, but an inherent structural advantage of the whole setup. Now, an effective system isn't just about what it can do, is it? It's about how it actually operates and how it sustains itself in the real world. And this blueprint really seems to dig into that, moving beyond just the ideal vision to the practical reality of making it work.
Absolutely. The operational framework section outlines exactly those essential non-technical elements you need for a trusted and viable ecosystem. It addresses everything from stakeholder alignment to privacy controls, auditability, fraud management, and those crucial commercial models. This ensures the system is not only functional, but also resilient, compliant, and really positioned for long-term success. It's all about guiding the design principles and the processes that establish and maintain trust among everyone involved. It's like setting the rules of the road.
That makes a lot of sense. So who are all the stakeholders in this new ecosystem then? It's got to be more than just the person holding the ID and the people checking it, right?
Precisely. Yeah, the blueprint really stresses the importance of a thorough stakeholder analysis. It pushes us to go beyond the obvious ones. While we immediately think of holders, that's you, the individual using it, and issuers, who provide the credentials, like a university issuing a degree, and verifiers, who need to check those credentials. There are definitely many others. We also need to consider network operators, regulators, and a whole host of third-party service providers, understanding their unique requirements, their concerns, their potential risks. That's absolutely crucial for informing how you design the user experience and the overall governance model.
We've talked about privacy being a core principle, but how does this blueprint make sure it's not just a nice idea on paper, but actually built into the system's day-to-day operations?
Well, the blueprint goes way beyond just mere compliance and its privacy controls. It details explicit approaches to data minimization, ensuring only the data absolutely necessary for a transaction is ever collected or shared. Then user control, giving you explicit, really granular say over your information at all times. And the strategic use of privacy-enhancing technologies. A fantastic example here is zero-knowledge proofs, or ZKPs.
ZKPS. Okay, that sounds a bit science fiction-y. Can you give us a really tangible aha moment? Like, what does that actually mean for us day to day?
Okay, think of it like this. Imagine you need to prove you're over 18 to buy something online. With the ZKP, you could prove you meet the age requirement without ever revealing your actual birth date or your name. Or proving you're a student entitled to a discount without sharing your entire student ID card details. ZKPs let you prove a specific fact about yourself is true without revealing any of the underlying data that proves it. It's a massive game changer for privacy. It allows essential verification without that constant oversharing we do now. The blueprint also highlights the role of data privacy impact assessments, DPIAs, as a proactive tool to sort of identify and mitigate privacy risks before they become problems.
That's incredibly powerful for personal privacy. Seriously. But What happens when something inevitably goes wrong? Things always do right. How can we be sure of what happened and who is responsible in such a well-distributed system?
Yeah, that's where auditability comes in. It's crucial. The blueprint defines precisely what records must be kept, for how long, and critically, their specific purpose. Is it for regulatory compliance, for forensic analysis if there's an incident, or for resolving disputes between parties? It also considers which stakeholders need to be included in these audit requirements and how they fit into the whole end-to-end architecture. The core idea is to have a clear, incorruptible record of key events, distinguishing between technical logs and procedural processes, so you can always reconstruct what actually occurred if you need to.
Okay, and fraud. That's a constant, exhausting battle in the digital world, isn't it? How does a decentralized system, which seems to give users so much control, tackle that persistent threat?
Right, fraud management is a critical component, and it's addressed proactively, not just reactively. The blueprint outlines a whole strategy for detecting and mitigating fraudulent activity. It starts by identifying potential weak points or fraud vectors that might be specific to a decentralized system. It defines the entire process flow, from continuous transaction monitoring to investigation, and even the suspension or revocation of compromised credentials if needed. But what's particularly compelling, I think, is how the system's inherent properties, things like cryptographic signing, the immutability of records on a distributed ledger, are presented as the first line of defense. This just makes it dramatically harder to tamper with identities and credentials in the first place. It really shifts the advantage away from the fraudsters.
So this isn't just some cool theoretical idea floating around. It needs to be economically viable, sustainable, right? How does it actually make money or, incentivize participation for all these crucial stakeholders you mentioned?
Absolutely, yeah. Long-term viability is key. The business and commercial model section tackles this head-on. It explores various financial constructs, maybe per transaction fees, maybe subscription models, it depends on the context, and it defines a clear liability model. So, who is responsible for what across the ecosystem? That needs to be unambiguous. It also sets the scope for different participants, issuers, wallet providers, verifiers, regtech firms, other value-added service providers, and crucially, it considers how they'll be incentivized and compensated for their role. The blueprint really emphasizes the absolute need for a robust go-to-market strategy to ensure sustainable operation and, hopefully, expansion. It's about building a living, breathing ecosystem, you see, not just a static platform.
Okay, fantastic. So we've covered the why, the vision, the core principles,
Okay.
and the how it operates those frameworks for trust and sustainability. Now let's get into the real nuts and bolts. What does this system actually do? What are its core capabilities from a business perspective?
Right, the functional design section is all about that. It defines the system's core capabilities by breaking them down into the fundamental functions, the things that different participants must be able to perform. Now, these aren't super detailed technical specifications at this stage. They're broad, strategic statements about what the system needs to accomplish. And they are what drive all the more detailed requirements later on. Think of them as the essential actions the system enables. We usually describe them using clear, sort of action-oriented phrases, like verb noun.
Perfect. Yeah, can you give us some examples of these core actions, maybe from the perspective of different users, like an issuer, or for us as holders, or maybe someone verifying credentials?
Certainly, yeah. So from the perspective of an issuer, let's say that's your university or maybe your employer, they would need capabilities like issue credential. So for example, creating and cryptographically signing your academic degree, or maybe a proof of employment, that's issuing. They'd also need to be able to revoke credential if something changes or is incorrect, and manage schemas. Schemas define the data structures for those credentials, ensuring everyone understands what degree means, for instance. Consistency. Now, for you, the holder, your capabilities are really all about control. Things like manage identity, that's creating, linking, maybe recovering your decentralized identifier, your badge. Also, receive credential into your digital wallet. Store credentials securely in that wallet under your control. Present proof. This is key, selectively sharing just a verifiable part of a credential with someone who needs it. And even revoke access if you've previously granted a proof to someone and want to take it back. Then for a verifier, say, an employer checking your degree or a rental agency verifying your income level. Their main capabilities are verify proof, basically, confirming the authenticity and validity of whatever you've presented. And resolve credential, which might involve looking up the issuer's DID and the credential schema to validate it against the trust network. Beyond these main players, there are also essential governance functions operating sort of behind the scenes. Things like managing data and key materials securely, providing identity verification services, managing trust lists of who's allowed to issue what, and handling all the audit, event, and maybe even billing functions.
Okay, those are the core actions. Makes sense. But what are some of the truly standout features that make a decentralized identity system not just functional, but genuinely powerful, maybe innovative? This is where the blueprint really shines, isn't it? It gets exciting.
It absolutely does. Let's highlight a few really critical ones. First, key management. This is absolutely foundational. You can't overstate its importance. We're talking about managing those decentralized identifiers, the DIDs, of course, but also a robust public key infrastructure, PKI, for verifying all the digital signatures. That's crucial. Things like hardware security modules, or HSMs, which are essentially tamper-proof digital vaults for your most critical cryptographic keys, and trust registers, which form the kind of foundational layer of who and what can actually be trusted within the network. It's the cryptographic backbone ensuring everything is verifiable and secure.
So it's really about building that ironclad trust foundation, isn't it? That's maybe one of the biggest innovations this blueprint highlights in how it handles identity verification itself.
Okay, that brings us neatly to identity verification. It defines the scope of entities, so not just natural persons like you and me, but also legal entities like companies or even things in the Internet of Things space. It specifies different proofing standards for different levels of assurance. You might need higher assurance for a bank account than for, say, website access. It integrates diverse evidence sources, includes robust fraud warnings, and can incorporate biometric verification too. What's quite innovative, I think, is the focus on delegated authority. This means, for example, a company could delegate its authority to an employee to sign a digital document using their own credentials, but provably on behalf of the company, all verifiable on the network. Another really crucial feature is wallet management. This addresses the practicalities. How do you initiate, enroll, store, and manage your credentials across all the different platforms you might use? Maybe it's in the cloud, maybe on a specific device like your phone, maybe in your browser, or even using specialized hardware wallets for extra security. The emphasis throughout is on usability and accessibility, making sure these powerful tools are actually easy for everyone to adopt and use effectively.
And what about data protection? I mean, that's such a massive concern today for everyone.
Absolutely vital, yes. The blueprint dedicates significant attention to GDPR and other data protection requirements. And this goes way beyond just ticking boxes for compliance. It outlines really robust requirements for consent management, user privacy policies, data portability, data processing limitations, retention schedules, and importantly, enforcement mechanisms across all participants in the ecosystem. It's about truly embedding privacy by design right from the start. And maybe one last one to touch on: API and SDK availability, application programming interfaces, and software development kits. This is critical because it ensures the system isn't just a closed silo, right? It provides the mechanisms for developers to interact with the system to build new applications and services on top of it. This fosters an open and flexible platform, allowing for constant innovation and for new use cases to emerge organically.
You know, what's fascinating here, listening to all this, is how all these elements, from those foundational principles we talked about earlier, right through to these specific, often quite complex features, they all seem meticulously designed with the end user, with you firmly in mind. It really feels like it's about giving you more control and a fundamentally more secure experience. It's a genuinely holistic approach, isn't it? Okay, so we've seen all these amazing capabilities and features, but how does it actually all come together in practice? Like, what are the key processes that make the system flow from end to end?
Right, this is where the logical design part of the blueprint comes in. It serves as that really crucial bridge between the high-level business vision we discussed and the detailed technical specifications that would come later. It defines the core mechanics of the system, but from a business-centric point of view, providing a clear shared understanding of how things actually operate day to day.
Okay. Can you walk us through a kind of conceptual journey? Like, how would a user get started? Or what happens when a credential gets issued and then later verified? Just a high-level feel for the main scenarios.
Of course. Yeah. The blueprint describes these core business processes using high-level workflows. Examples for the main scenarios. So, for instance, identity creation would detail the steps for a user to establish their unique decentralized identity, their DID. Credential issuance would outline the flow from an issuer creating and cryptographically signing a credential to you, the holder, receiving it and securely storing it in your digital wallet under your control. And then credential presentation verification illustrates the precise steps you take to share a specific proof, maybe just your age, from your driver's license VC with a verifier, and then how that verifier checks its authenticity and validity against the network trust framework. The emphasis here in the logical design is very much on what happens during these interactions between all the stakeholders, rather than the super technical nitty-gritty of how it works under the hood.
Okay. So, what are the fundamental pieces of information this entire system is built upon? Like, what's the basic language of the data it uses?
That's covered by the conceptual data model. It's quite elegant, actually. It defines the key data entities in the system and shows how they relate to each other. It provides that shared understanding of the information being managed. The foundational data objects, the main ones, include the DID, the decentralized identifier that's your unique self-owned identifier on the network. Then the DID document, which holds verifiable information about your DID, like your public keys needed for verification. The VC, or verifiable credential, think of this as the digital tamper-proof version of your driver's license, your diploma, your membership card. And finally, the VP, or verifiable presentation. This is basically a package containing one or more VCs or parts of VCs that you choose to selectively share with the verifier for a specific purpose. Understanding how these core pieces, DID, DID, doc, VC, VP, relate to each other is really key to grasping the system's underlying structure and logic.
Makes sense. So, ultimately, how do we know if all this effort, all this complex architectural thinking has actually succeeded? How do we measure the impact of such a, well, potentially transformative system?
That's the final crucial piece, success factors. The blueprint really emphasizes the importance of choosing metrics that are directly linked to the specific business goals you set out to achieve. It cautions strongly against using what it calls vanity metrics, things that look good but don't actually reflect real value. So, for example, if a primary goal was to improve user experience, then relevant metrics might be user satisfaction scores, maybe using something like Net Promoter Score, NPS, or tracking the average time to verification for a credential. How quick and easy is it? If reducing fraud was a key objective, well, then you'd track the reduction in successful fraud attempts using the system compared to older methods. The focus is always on measuring what truly indicates business value and demonstrates the realization of the system's overarching objectives.
Wow. What an incredible journey we've had today, really digging into this high-level business architecture blueprint for decentralized identity systems. We've unpacked the why, that compelling vision of individual agency, those core principles like privacy and security, the how it operates, those robust frameworks for establishing trust, ensuring sustainability, managing fraud, the what it does, the core capabilities for everyone involved, issuers, holders, verifiers, and those really powerful key features that make it work. And finally, the how it flows in practice and how we measure its ultimate success. It's been quite the deep dive.
It really has. And this exploration, I hope, has revealed the kind of rigorous, detailed thinking that's absolutely required to move from just a concept to a viable, genuinely empowering system. The vision is definitely clear. To equip individuals and organizations, too, with unprecedented agency over their digital identity and their personal data. And that could fundamentally transform how we all interact in the digital realm.
You know, this deep dive has really shown us the incredible architectural thinking behind the idea of truly owning your digital self. But thinking about it, this isn't just about convenience or even just security, is it? It raises a much bigger question, I think. What broader societal changes might we actually start to see when digital trust is rebuilt from the ground up, placing you, the individual, right at the absolute center? Something to ponder. Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. We really hope this has given you a powerful shortcut to understanding the future of your digital identity. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time.